Hi guys, so welcome to or back to my channel. Thank you for joining me. I'm Shannon, British Girl Explores. Welcome to the BGE squad. Thank you for joining me. I hope you're all doing well, and today we're going to be reading scary stories. So I'm going to be using and finding stories from Reddit. I have gone through a bunch of communities on Reddit and found and saved a load of stories to share with you guys. Some of them will be real stories based on true events. Some of them will be fiction made up just for fun. Some of them will be paranormal. Some of them will be creepy encounters or let's not meet kind of stories. So we have a good selection going on. Also, some of these stories will be on the shorter side, some may be on the longer side. I will try to read as many as I can for you guys in one video. I will be doing more story videos in the future. I would like to carry on with this whole scary story kind of content for you guys because I quite like it. So I've got my phone at the ready and I have my fabulous cup of tea as well. So sit back, relax, get your snacks, get your tea, get your drinks, get comfortable, and let's chill and hang out together while reading scary stories. So this first story is called I Messed Up and Now My Boss Thinks I'm Trying to Seduce Him. This story was posted in the short scary stories community on Reddit by a user called Spratus_Spratus. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sorry if I just butchered that name. Just have another sip of my cup of tea. So let's get started. I can't believe what I did. My boss must think I'm an idiot. I'm just a trainee and I've been messing things up from the first day. But this was bad, even for me. Today was first day out of the office. He was supposed to show me around the hall, like what metals come in, what products go out, what equipment the company has, what the hall workers do. Like, this is the stuff I need to know, and I was prepared. I was taking notes, I had questions for him to really prove my diligence. He started showing where I can check our equipment info. He pointed out the lower corner of the big drill where it has a small info sticker, and of course, wanting to show that I'm paying attention, I really bent down there to have a look. And what do you know? I, being the screw-up klutz that I am, managed to press the drill on and have my hair caught in it. And with my head pulled down, my butt lifted up, my skirt got somehow raised and he saw my brand new lace panties. I swear I just wear those because they make me feel secretly pretty, but he must have thought I planned the whole thing. I was bent over right in front of him, wiggling my butt in his face like some kind of idiot as I was struggling free. Of course, all the hall workers came to watch. They stopped the drill, but it had already ripped off my scalp and half of my face, and was currently eating my sleeve. So when they pulled me away from the drill, my corpse just flung onto the floor, legs all sprawled in an embarrassing position, and my shirt, get this, was ripped into the drill. I was in my bra. That's when I knew I don't have a future in this career. The police came, asking everyone questions, making sure they all knew what I'd done. And my boss, he just kept repeating, "It's all my fault, I didn't make us wear safety equipment." Like he's a real sweet family man, eats lunch with trainees and shows pictures of his kids, and he was still trying to save my face in front of the others, even though he must have been thinking I was trying to hit on him to succeed in the company, which I'd never do. I can't go back tomorrow. The way people talk in our company, everyone's going to know by morning. I'm too embarrassed, and surely I'm going to be fired. How can anyone get over something like this? What can I do? They're giving me an autopsy now, and it sounds like they're going to give me a few days of sick leave. But I'll have to explain myself sooner or later, and no matter what I say, it feels like it's just going to make things sound worse. So that was that story, guys. Credit to that user. I'm assuming that that story was real or based on true events, something along those lines. And it was posted in a scary story community on Reddit. So props to that person. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'll just have a sip of my tea and then we'll get on to another one. So for my next story, guys, this is going to be more of a paranormal, ghost related kind of story. It's in a community called Ghosts, and this one was written by Putrid Conference 386. I'll try and show you guys. So credits to this user. The title goes, I found the courage to turn around and look. So this one's kind of long, but it's not horrendously long. Way back in 2002, I was living in a small studio flat / apartment in Whaley Range, sorry I might have butchered that, Manchester, UK. For those of you who are unfamiliar with a studio flat, it's a small apartment with the bedroom, living room and kitchen all in one open room with a small bathroom. It's where you live when you're not quite poor enough to be homeless. At the time, I was working at a restaurant as a barman and didn't get home until pretty late, around midnight. One evening, I came home from work and went to bed. Shortly after, I heard noises in the kitchen, 2 meters from my bed, which sounded like somebody walking around. My first thought was that someone had broken into my flat whilst I was out, then hid when I came home and waited until I fell asleep before trying to sneak out. I jumped out of bed, ready to wrestle a crackhead, but no one was there. I searched everywhere, which didn't take long considering how small my shitty apartment was, and went back to bed, but left a lamp on. The same noises started again almost instantly. This time, however, I could clearly hear the sound of footsteps, leather shoes on the kitchen lino floor. Because I knew there was nobody in the apartment, I became almost paralysed with fear. It's hard to describe because it's not fear in a conventional sense, but fear of something unknown. The footsteps got closer and closer until the floorboard in line with my pillow loudly creaked. Whatever it was standing right behind me, and that's when I heard it breathing. Its breath was loud and laboured, as if it was struggling to breathe. At this point, I was as terrified as I've ever been in my life, but decided to turn around and look. I knew this may be my only chance to see something extraordinary, so very slowly, I peeked over my shoulder and saw it. It looked like a shadow, not a 2-dimensional shadow cast on an object, but a 3-dimensional one in the middle of the room. Some of it wasn't visible. From the shoulders up and from the knees down, it had faded away, but in the area in between I could clearly make out a back with arms and hands swing gently at the sides. I could also see the upper legs moving. It was slowly walking away from me and continued to do so until it reached a window and faded away completely. I didn't sleep that night thinking about what I saw and if it would ever come back. It didn't. Even now, some nights I lie awake wondering if I had actually seen a ghost. I'd be interested to hear from anyone else who thinks they've seen a ghost to see if their description is similar to mine. Tea time. Alright guys, that was story number 2. I'm going to try and do a third one. Apologies, I'm not doing it brilliantly right now. I look kind of rough, I've got the sniffles, my nose is feeling blocked and my throat's a bit dry and iffy, so I do apologise. But if you can bear with me, that's brilliant. Alright guys, so this next story was posted in a community called spooky underscore stories. So it's a spooky stories community on Reddit. This story is called Holiday Confessional. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce this user's username, but I will try and show you guys. I hope you guys can see that okay. But yeah, credit to this person. Okay, this one's quite long, so it might take me a while, so bear with me. The doorbell closed and roused Father Maxi from his doze. He had been napping in the confessional booth and had honestly expected not to be disturbed until morning. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. He glanced at his watch and saw it was midnight on Christmas Day. He tried to hide the sigh that escaped him and managed to hide it nicely behind a yawn. Whoever's idea it had been to hold a Christmas Eve confessional was beyond him, but so far it had netted very few sinners past 10 o'clock. Father Maxi had so far spoken to two drunks, parishioner Matthew, who believed that folding his sister's underwear was a sin, and a pervert who wanted to breathe heavily until he left a sinful mess in the box. He had hoped that the pervert would be the last, but this man had come in and ruined his celebration. Father, are you there? Yes, my son, he said as he straightened himself. Speak your sin and I will listen. This night I did break into a house without consent. Father Maxi nodded. He was often privy to crimes, both the black and the less serious. He had heard more than one God Catholic who'd admitted to converting his neighbour's flat screen this week. He usually kept such sins to himself, but last year, when that crying man had admitted to raping all those children, he had been forced to go talk to Detective O'Shaughnessy, another good Catholic. Sins were one thing, but Father Maxi was not the sort of priest to let child molestation continue, as the diocese could have attested. This fellow, though, would likely be sent on with a few Hail Marys and a Merry Christmas. Very well, my son, 12 Hail. I'm not finished, Father. I can't go to the police with this story, and I know that you've always been a good boy who will know what to do with the information. Good boy? That phrase took him back a little bit. Father Maxi, a priest, was well into his 40s, hadn't been a boy in many years. Continue, my son, I will listen. When I came in, I went to the tree and began my work. I was half done. There were so many presents, you understand. When I heard a noise upstairs, I ignored it at first. With 3 children in the home, someone was likely to be a light sleeper. But as I worked, the noise became louder. I finally recognised it for what it was, and the sound made me curious and a little worried. It was a child who was crying. Father Maxi leaned closer to the rectangle grate in the confessional booth. Despite the hour, the stranger's story had drawn him in. Through the shadowy hole of the confessional booth, Father Maxi could see an old man with a white beard and a bald head. He had a cap in his hand and a garish red coat that looked damp with snow. Though his eyes were downcast, Father Maxi could tell he was crying. There was a smell in the booth again, something detectable only as an afterthought. Peppermint, maybe with an underlying smell of horse stall or barn floor. I went upstairs to have a look. Sometimes I do happen upon scenes of a less than cheery nature, and I thought I might do some good for a needy child. When I reached the landing, I immediately knew that something was wrong. A dog was slumped at the top of the stairs. I thought he was sleeping at first, but when I touched him, his head flopped to the side to show me his neck was broken. Rascal was never a good watchdog. I'd given him treats more than once to quiet him while I was there, and his friendliness had finally gotten to the better of him. Then I heard the noise again and turned my attention to the children's room. Maxie was silent on the other side of the grate, held fast by the stranger's story. He told his tale as though it were an episode of Law and Order, and as he spoke, Maxie almost felt as though he were there with him. He could see Rascal and Matt with some German Shepherd roots lying on the floor, with his neck snapped and his friendly face still set in its internal grin of slackening realization. The landing was dark, a night light spilling out, the only light to be seen as the Christmas tree stood cheery sentinel bellow. He heard the whimper from the darkness and turned his eyes towards the cracked door halfway down the hall. How was the stranger doing this? I crept, not wanting to spook anyone if the child was just having a nightmare. But when I reached the door, I heard the sound again and knew it was no sleeping child. The sound I heard was waking terror, the fear too dark to vocalize, and now its owner must suffer in crippled silence as the monster falls upon him. I pushed the door open, not caring who heard, and found myself inside an abattoir. The room, you see, was small but big enough for 3 boys, 3 beds, each a different colour, and each with the boys' names stenciled on the front, stood in a line. The other half of the room was free for play, and the floor was cluttered with toys and games. 2 of the beds were occupied, but not with the happy, smiling boys I'd seen before. Some nights when I visit, I would peek in on them and see what dreams their faces painted. Each of them had always been a fresh canvas, a fine boy with Christmas morning prancing in their dreams, but tonight he was very different. He fetched a deep sigh, and Maxie was afraid he might stop. He was invested now and needed to know how it ended, no matter how terrible. Tonight I saw that too, would never dream again. Their blood was a garish red as it soaked into the sheets. Maxie gasped, unsure what sort of confession this was becoming, but knowing it was like to be terrible. These 2, however, were luckier than the third. They had been cut before they woke, and thus had expired without knowing the terror the third now lived in. They were too old, you see. The monster I had interrupted only preyed upon the youngest of lambs. When I opened the door, I had inadvertently stumbled upon the blackest of tablias. One was a child in flannel pyjamas, smiling superheroes looking on in frozen acceptance from his top. As blood oozed from one arm, which he had raised to defend himself, the other, the object of his fear, was a haggard man dressed as Kris Kringle. His coat and face were red with blood. His beard was matted with it as though he had been chewing someone up just seconds before, and over his head was held a long knife poised for the kill. He paused for a moment as though to draw strength, and Father Maxie pulled in a frantic breath, his rapture too deep for breath. When I saw him, Father, when I saw that man dressed in red and preying upon a child's love at Christmas, I saw red myself. Another pause. Forgive me, Father, if I have sinned. On this night I did knowingly commit murder. I knowingly crushed that man's skull against the frightened child's headboard, and I cannot say that my act was only to save that child. I felt wronged, blasphemed against. That he should take my image to inspire such fear was to me monstrous. Then I've also committed idolatry. Sorry guys, I suppose. I compared myself to God, of whom I am a so-called saint. I suppose my crimes and my sins are threefold then, but I would do it again to remove such a monster from this world before he could hurt another child. His words moved the priest, but also confused him. Was this man crazy? Had he really been a home invader turned saviour? Or was he... What is your name, my son? What name did your mother give you on the day of your birth? Nicholas, Father. I am called Nicholas. Father Maxie felt it hard to speak, his throat tight with tears, and his mind was a stranger to him. Given the circumstances, my son, 12 Hail Marys should do it. You may say them on your way, for you have a long night ahead of you, if I'm not entirely mistaken. I do, Father. The man was almost crying. When he faced the mesh rectangle, Father Maxie could swear that he felt a warmth radiating through it. For just a moment he felt filled with a spirit he hadn't felt since he was a child. It was as though all the years and all the miles had been erased, and he had received a portion of his faith back this Christmas Day. His night was far from over, though. He had heard the man leave the booth and felt moved to catch a glimpse of the old saint. Much like the child he had once been, a child who had sat at the top of the stairs with his brother Aaron and waited all night to catch a glimpse. He wanted to see the man and prove to himself that the Christmas spirit was flesh and magic. He threw the curtain aside, his face awash with a rosy glow, but there was no jolly saint before him, no reindeer sleigh, no bag of toys or cheery elves. Only a shivering, tear-streaked boy draped in a red coat. He had a large cut down his arm, just as the man had said he would, but was otherwise unharmed for someone who would turn out to be the last victim of a serial killer called the Yuletide Carver. He had killed 6 families that year, all of them killed in their beds, with the youngest child saved to last before being brutally raped and murdered. When the police arrived at the young boy's house later that morning, they found his dog, his parents, and his 2 brothers all dead in their beds. Their throats were slashed, and the weapon they found would match their wounds and the other victims perfectly. The last body, the one dressed in a Santa costume that he had likely stolen from a mall he'd recently been fired from, was found laid across the last bed, with his skull caved in, the murder weapon clutched in his frozen hand. That would come later, though. For now, the priest bent down before the boy, like a penitent before the cross, and inspired his injuries. He wasn't hurt too badly. He had a long, jagged cut on his arm, but his eyes told the old priest that many of his injuries were below the surface. Maxie raised the child's face, a handsome and well-made face that would likely find little trouble finding a new home if none of his family could be found, and asked him about the man who saved him. It would be the statement in all the papers the next day. It would be the headline used by many to paint an end to the long night that had held the city for so long. It was Santa. The real Santa saved me. Okay guys, that last story was a long one and I messed up a few times, but that's okay. I can cut those bits out. But yeah, thank you guys for joining me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. That last story, I'm not sure if it was like true or based on real events or fiction or made up. I'm not entirely sure. But either way, it was an interesting story. I will have to put like a trigger warning before or at the start of that story for like death, murder, R word, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, thank you all for being here. I appreciate you guys joining me. I appreciate all the love, kindness and support. I hope you're all doing well. Happy December. I hope you all are having a good week, and I hope you all have a good next week. I hope you all have a good month and end to the year. And yeah, thanks for joining me and the BGE squad. I will see you guys again very soon for more videos and live streams. Make sure to like, comment, share and subscribe, and I will see you guys again soon. Thanks guys, bye.